windy weather sweep across the country this weekend.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About on GB News with me, Alex Phillips, where we get stuck into the issues that we should be looking at in depth. Nothing is off the table and no one will be cancelled for saying what they think. Keeping me company today is Benedict Spence, political commentator and freelance journalist writing on a whole range of topics. And here's what we've got coming up on the show. The Prime Minister announces his plan to end COVID restrictions, including self-isolation, a month earlier than planned. But is he right to do so? I'll get reaction from a health expert. Meanwhile, a cabinet reshuffle has seen a new department for Brexit headed by no one other than Jacob Rees-Mogg. But what is it, and what does it need to do to create more opportunities for Britain? And from fast food to fast fashion, Greggs teams up with Primark to launch a clothing collection. Sounds a bit crazy. We'll see just how tasty its range is set to be. That's what we're talking about for the next hour. But what do you need to talk about? Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me @gbnews. But first, it's time for the GB News headlines with Rosie.
Good afternoon. It's just gone 1 minute past 2 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. A picture of the Prime Minister has just been published by the Daily Mirror that they say shows Boris Johnson at a virtual Christmas quiz on the 15th of December in 2020. Now, at the time, coronavirus restrictions banned indoor social mixing between households. When challenged in the Commons, Mr Johnson said the event in question had already been submitted for investigation. The Metropolitan Police are currently not investigating that gathering on the 15th of December, having reviewed evidence from the Sue Gray inquiry. The Prime Minister says he expects to end all the last domestic coronavirus restrictions, including the legal duty for cases to self-isolate, a month early. During Prime Minister's questions, Boris Johnson told MPs he'll present the government's Living with COVID plan after the half-term recess on the 21st of February.
Provided the current encouraging trends in the data continue, it is my expectation that we will be able to end the last domestic restrictions, including the legal requirement to self-isolate if you test positive, a full month early.
Well, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer's criticised the government's energy bills plan by branding it a dodgy loan, not a proper plan.
His plan is to hand billions of pounds of taxpayers' cash to energy companies and then force families to pay it off in instalments for years to come. If it sounds like he's forcing people to take out a loan, and it looks like he's forcing people to take out a loan, isn't it just forcing people to take out a loan?
The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, has accepted the apology of Junior Health Minister Gillian Keegan after she admitted to continuing an in-person meeting despite finding out she tested positive for coronavirus in a lateral flow test. While posting on Twitter, Ms Keegan said she was listening to 3 fathers who'd lost their daughters to suicide when she found out her positive result. She says that with their consent, she stayed for a short period to hear their stories, but realises that was an error of judgment. Sajid Javid says he continues to support her in her role. Virginia Giuffre will be interviewed under oath by the Duke of York's lawyers in April as part of her civil claim against him. Ms Giuffre is suing Prince Andrew for damages in the US, claiming she was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein to have sex with the royal when she was 17. Prince Andrew, has strenuously denied all the allegations. He'll also give evidence under oath in a deposition on the 10th of March in London, in what's been described as a neutral location. Businesses have faced higher costs, more paperwork and border delays because of the UK's exit from the EU. That's the analysis of the public spending watchdog. The cross-party group of MPs is urging the government to do more to ease administration and costs suffered by firms. The Public Accounts Committee also warned there may be lengthier border delays and lorry queues once passenger numbers return to normal, as expected later this year, given the new border requirements. The Foreign Secretary is flying to Moscow today to meet her Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, to discuss the situation in Ukraine. Liz Truss plans to urge Russia to pursue a diplomatic solution and to make clear that another Russian invasion would bring massive consequences. Russia's ambassador to London said the country was only interested in talks if Britain had constructive proposals, and said the talks would be pointless if sanctions were threatened. An online petition that's been calling for West Ham defender Kurt Zouma to be prosecuted over alleged animal cruelty and to have all his animals removed. The petition's now received over 150,000 signatures. Well, Zouma apologised yesterday after a video surfaced online of him kicking and slapping a cat. Essex Police is currently liaising with the RSPCA on the matter as part of what they describe as their urgent inquiries. Now, despite the controversy, the West Ham player was on the pitch last night playing against Watford, but was booed by fans from both sides. Adele has made a triumphant return to the Brit Awards by picking up 3 of the biggest prizes on the night.
Adele, easy on me! Congratulations.
The pop star won Song of the Year, Album of the Year and Artist of the Year, a category that's gone gender neutral for the first time. Other winners included Sam Fender, who won Best Rock and Alternative Artist, while Songwriter of the Year went to Ed Sheeran. You're up to date now here on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now, back to Alex for We Need to Talk About.
Imagine having a refreshing reshuffle to win back public confidence and nobody really noticing. Well, that seems to have been the latest grand plan to fall foul of the Boris voodoo. What was supposed to be a box office classic, magicking up a new Brexit department and putting Moggy in charge, barely raised a meh. While other tinkerings in the cabinet were branded little more than a he-shuffle. Meanwhile, the papers are already plotting headlines from a speech planned by Sir John Major tomorrow, a man who knows all too well that Tory PMs live and die by questions over the EU and sleaze. If Sir John says anything, it should be that dodging the guillotine of backbenchers means dragging the government through a gauntlet of relentless attack. So, as Boris tries to enable the great British public by calling time on COVID, his MPs watch and wait, pens poised, ready to scribble to Sir Graham Brady, while that Met Police report is gaining chapters in Scotland Yard. But is Bojo actually getting back his mojo? Joining me now on the show is Professor in Politics and International Relations Matthew Goodwin and independent statistician and political commentator Jamie Jenkins. Jamie, I'm going to start with you because it seems like a very obvious move that the Prime Minister has made, saying he's going to cut all COVID restrictions a few weeks early. The legislation was due for renewal in March, likely to be a policy that's very popular with people who are frankly fed up with the pandemic. But is it the right move?
Yeah, well, Alex, I think there comes a point where we do need to kind of learn to live with the virus, and doing it as you go in towards the spring and then obviously the summer months is much better to do it than when you're in the winter months. Whether or not we would have been in this position to have done this had the Omicron variant not come along, I'm not so sure. But if you do look at the facts and figures, the number of patients in intensive care has been significantly falling, and it's, the vast majority of patients in hospital now are in with Omicron, but then are actually being treated because of Omicron. And we kind of, if you're looking at the deaths figures, the SAGE were predicting that potentially up to 3,000 deaths we would peak in January, and we haven't gone above 200. So I think an important thing to kind of look at where we are now, Alex, is that if you take the ONS figures on total deaths, so let's not just focus on COVID, let's look at total deaths in the country at the moment, and they're actually similar to what we would see in a normal winter. They're lower than some of the years just before the pandemic as well. So I think some people will be concerned that if self-isolation's scrapped, will more people catch it, will more vulnerable people catch it? So we'll be interested to see what his plan is, because it might be that there's no requirement to self-isolate, but there might be some advisories to self-isolate if you're living with or close to some kind of vulnerable people.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Do you think this is the sort of policy that, entities like Transport for London, shops, supermarkets, businesses might go their own way on this and say, look, if we still want the testing regimen to continue. If you test positive for COVID, don't come into work. Or do you think that, we're ready as a nation now to just literally live with COVID, whether we have it or not, whether we spread it or not, just get on with life?
Well, I don't think, Alex, you're going to see Scotland and Wales, for example, follow Boris, partly probably to do with political reasons. They obviously do things differently. So I live in Wales. I don't see Mark Drakeford following Boris. What will be interesting if the other devolved nations don't do that, is to look at the data there and actually see if we see any significant differences. Because remember, the devolved nations put in further restrictions over the Christmas period. Didn't have any real different outcome in terms of England. Things didn't get too bad overall in England there. So you might be hitting there, though, that you're going to get, say, Transport for London, some local authorities, and it starts becoming a bit of a mess if you get local people doing local things and schools can do some other things, because people don't know where they're coming or going then, do they?
Yeah, I'm going to now come to you, Matthew, because it seems to me that this is very much designed to put out some really good news, to lift the mood of the nation when Boris Johnson's back's against the ropes. But do you think actually that the public are ready for this? Because when we've seen polling done in the past, there seems to be a suggestion that a lot of members of the general public actually want restrictions to stay in place. Has this been a savvy move by the Prime Minister, do you think?
I think it's certainly been a savvy move in terms of his Conservative Parliamentary Party, who are, of course, looking for reasons to believe in Boris, and lifting remaining restrictions and saying he's getting as quickly toward that end period, the sort of endemic phase of this, which is probably still a way off, but he's trying to get there in order to shore up his support within the Conservative Party. Among the country as a whole, I think a lot of people are quite desperate to get back to some sense of normality. I think they were certainly favourable towards the lockdowns, more favourable than perhaps many people realised at the time. But there's certainly been a bit of a relaxation in that. The other thing, though, Alex, is that's quickly being replaced by concerns about the economy. Only this morning I was looking at data which has shown how the British public is becoming much more anxious about inflation, prices and the cost of living. So in their eyes, of course, one crisis may be replacing another.
Yeah, and the difficulty that I suppose the Prime Minister faces is the optics on this are always very difficult to manage. I mean, we're going to be talking later about big energy and some of the profits being registered by companies such as BP and Shell. But these are far more nuanced and complex situations that essentially give the opposition an open goal to say, look at these dreadful capitalists, look at the money big business is making, look at how you're suffering at home. But to be able to unpick that's very difficult. And Boris is essentially going to be in the firing line for this, as is, of course, Rishi Sunak, who to date has always maintained quite a high amount of good public opinion.
Well, Rishi Sunak's leadership ratings are now at the lowest level ever recorded. Yesterday, he's on a leadership rating of +8, compared to Keir Starmer on -1, Boris Johnson on -26. So he's still relatively popular, but the levels of support overall are actually very low. The problem for the Conservatives, Alex, you hit the nail on the head, is that they're really losing the historic ownership of key issues like tax, inflation, management of the economy. And if they lose that, especially as Brexit begins to move into the rearview mirror in the minds of many voters, that is going to be a problem for Johnson. He's tried to reboot his levelling up strategy this week. We saw the white paper last week. He's tried to reboot number 10, as you just mentioned. The reshuffle perhaps hasn't cut through in a major way. And that's going to really raise this awkward question of, well, what are the Conservatives going to be talking about as we go through the rest of 2022 in order to keep this unique coalition together that they've got?
Jamie, Matthew, thank you so much for joining me on the show today and unpicking some of the political narratives that have emerged following that Prime Minister's questions. I'm now going to join my studio guest in discussion over this. I mean, these do seem to be very sort of PR baubles, don't they? COVID's over. We're going to be the first developed nation to sort of move into treating the virus as endemic. We've now got a Brexit department. Is this enough? Is this going to get the voters going, brilliant, this is the sort of leadership we wanted? Or are these sort of interventions by this Tory donor John Armitage and Sir John Major, who's making a speech tomorrow where he's expected to drive the knife into Boris, are those going to dominate headlines and continue to see a struggling Prime Minister?
In isolation, I don't think any of these things on either side of the divide actually matter that much. I think they're all a bit of noise. I don't think people have forgotten what Partygate was and what it represents, the hypocrisy about putting laws in place, forcing people to adhere to them and then breaking them. I think that's still the fundamental issue. I think as popular as things like Brexit are, or as unpopular, although amongst people who aren't going to vote for Boris Johnson anyway, but as popular an issue as that is, I don't think it's going to be enough, these measures that are currently being announced, to distract people. I think people are still sort of waiting to see what the result of the Metropolitan Police investigation is into the Prime Minister. I don't think anybody's fooled or even interested in the reshuffle. Actually, I think they recognise that there are no big beasts have left. Jacob Rees-Mogg's new move, I think, is quite interesting. Not actually for the Brexit aspect. I think that's sort of a bauble to say, oh, look, Brexit, we're taking it seriously. I actually think the other part of his job is going to be about government efficiency. I think that's actually much more interesting than the Brexit angle. Is it going to distract anybody in the long term? No, not until we see tangible benefits, and nobody sees tangible benefits yet. You're right, it's PR, it's window dressing. We aren't that stupid. We're not falling for it just now.
I mean, it's interesting you mention Partygate because, of course, a new photograph has dropped. Basically, as soon as PMQs is over, as soon as he's managed to rush out what's supposed to be tomorrow's headlines, here's yet another photograph of a party that I think we already know about, although it's hard to keep track. I mean, this is going to be relentless. I said in my opening that John Major survived the backbenchers only to drag his own government through a gruelling period of constant speculation, media attacks, waning public faith. I mean, is that basically history on repeat for Boris?
This is the thing. You know, we hear a lot about how Conservative MPs, backbench MPs, they can be incredibly ruthless. They'll wield the knife. They didn't in John Major's case. They're not doing it right now, and the public see that. And when the public see people not acting, they say to themselves, well, that means that there's nobody actually with the gravitas behind the scenes who is capable of being Prime Minister. So even if it does happen down the line, the options are not good. And as you say, it's what, two and a bit years until we get to the next general election. It is going to be that steady, slow bleed of confidence. What Boris hopes, obviously, is that he can sort of reverse it, sort of a slow coagulation, if you like, of actually sort of trying to very slowly regenerate and heal. History suggests that doesn't tend to happen. You know, it didn't really happen for Blair post-Iraq, or, you know, Theresa May was never able to win back a lot of the goodwill that she had at the start. So he's playing an incredibly dangerous game, but also the Tory party itself is playing an incredibly dangerous game. If it isn't decisive, if it just shows itself to be the Boris Johnson party, then it will go down with Boris Johnson if he's not able to win back the voters. And right now, I wouldn't put a lot of money on him winning back the voters.
I mean, the chronology of events is what's going to be key here, isn't it? Because we all know that sort of Damocles, the Met police report is hanging over Boris. And it seems very unlikely now that report's going to come back and exonerate the Prime Minister. So it almost seems like a ticking time bomb. And so he's now got a very shortened period of time in which he's got to really win the hearts and minds of the public. So much so that his own party leaped to his defence when that report drops. jobs. And he's got to do this against the backdrop of a fuel crisis, a cost of living crisis. I mean, it's a mammoth task.
It is a mammoth task, and it's partly why I think it's too big a gamble to keep him in place. Let's say that it all goes very well. Okay, and he is exonerated. OK, fantastic. You've still got all of that in the background for which he will carry the can, as well as, just the general ill feeling of, OK, even if he didn't break the law or break the rules, we're still not particularly happy with how he carried on. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is the Met comes back and says, oh, he might have actually broken the law. In which case, how can he carry on? It's not a question of waiting to see whether or not he's broken the rules. The party, I think, needs to just bite the bullet and go, we have a higher standard than just whether or not the Prime Minister has broken the law. That actually, it is about the reputation of the party, it's about the reputation of British politics, and we need to act now.
But he does have the magic dust, that's the problem. Like you said, who's going to replace him?
Does he really have the magic dust right now? I mean, to have had such a staggering lead as he had, and let's remember, actually, before the pandemic and even during the pandemic, his ratings were sky high. To have frittered it away on such nonsense as, putting in place these laws and then, skirting around them. I mean, come on, that's not actually the behaviour of somebody who is particularly electorally savvy, politically savvy. He might have been, like a great footballer. He might have been really good once. That doesn't mean he's going to stay that way forever.
Oh, cutting analysis there. Listen, I want to know your views. Does Boris still have the magic dust, or has that USP, the unique selling point of him being able to laugh at life? Are you still laughing at that, or do you find it all a bit cringe, especially in the context of the COVID restrictions? And do you think those restrictions should end early? Lots to talk about today. So email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet us at gbnews. Well, you're with GB News on TV and radio. It's time for a short break now and then a check on the weather forecast. I'm back in a bit.
Hello. Most of us will have a dry day today, but increasingly across Scotland, we're seeing showers turning more and more wintry, and we have a Met Office warning for snow in place across parts of Scotland for later today. One more mild day across the south, but here it will turn colder as this cold front moves through. It is providing quite a bit of cloud, and in places a little bit of patchy rain. But it's further north where the winds are strengthening. We've got the wintry showers coming in, snow over hills, but even down to low levels, some snow flurries possible, moving in on that fairly brisk wind. Patchy rain from that weather front across parts of southern England, South Wales, tending to ease off and push further south. The far southeast, dry and bright, but clouding over here. That's where we could see the top temperatures, 13, maybe 14 degrees. Further north, though, we've already got the colder air. So single figures, feeling colder with the wind, and increasingly we'll see those snow showers coming in across western Scotland, likely to pep up overnight. Several centimetres of snow on some of the higher routes here. Snow down to low levels for a time before at low levels turning more back to rain during Thursday. But ice is an extra hazard also. Patchy rain clearing the south, still pretty mild in the south, but not as mild as recent nights. Frost likely across the north where we have clear skies. And if you get some shelter from the wind. But a blustery, showery day across Scotland to come tomorrow. Those showers still of snow over hills. And again, the likelihood for some disruption. Ice is a potential risk as well, where we've got the showers during Thursday. Mostly dry and bright further south, but not as mild. Temperatures back closer to average single figures. Certainly feeling colder with the strong winds, which will be blowing for most of the day across Scotland before easing through the evening. Then, generally, as the winds continue to ease and we have clearer skies, going to turn cold on Thursday night with a fairly widespread frost. But that should lead into a sparkling day of sunshine for many on Friday before we see spells of wet and increasingly windy weather sweep across the country this weekend.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Well, a pandemic-proportioned pregnant pause, rather scuppered promises of the big Brexit boom that was supposed to define the Boris Johnson legacy. Although a world-leading vaccine rollout and reinvigorated foreign policy free from EU drudgery have shown the possibilities that lie in store if the government takes our newfound freedom by the scruff of the neck. But fear not. A brand new role has been created for a Minister for Brexit Opportunities, and none other than Leave grandee Jacob Rees-Mogg will be tasked with whipping around Whitehall to harvest the dividends of sovereignty that we were all promised. But is this just a PR stunt to woo back Red Wall voters? Or will a coordinator to create a consolidated strategy finally see some conviction policies put in place to shape a bright, independent future? Well, the Public Accounts Committee have helpfully pointed out all the bureaucracy from a deal brokered in panic. So what next for Brexit Britain? Sunny-up plans or protocols, price rises and punishment from Brussels? Well, joining me on the show now is the Secretary General of the International Chamber of Commerce, Chris Southworth. Chris, are there any benefits for this new Brexit department? What should they be doing, and what do you make of the Public Accounts Committee's analysis so far?
Well, I think it's all about how this department under Jacob Rees-Mogg is going to be channeling its energy. I think the fear in business is that Jacob Rees-Mogg undertakes a sort of bonfire of the regulations to get the economy growing at pace again. And that's exactly what we don't want. Industry, consumers, civil society, workers and unions are all asking for a smart regulatory approach to driving growth in the future. We all want a high standards economy and to be an exemplar in the world in terms of an advanced standards-based economy driving growth. And just to put a flavour on that, in the trade environment, there is a real opportunity for someone like Cabinet Office to put a laser focus on the pain points for industry, removing those pain points, and then delivering solutions and innovation at scale to drive growth. And just to give you a flavour of that, we know that a combination of smart regulation with digitization led by government will deliver 225 billion in efficiency savings, 25 billion in SME growth, 1 to 2 billion extra in trade finance, and a reduction of trade costs by 80%. It's enormous. So if he's going to come in with that kind of mindset to rally government around real pain points for real industry realities, then that could really make a difference.
I mean, Boris Johnson has promised in various policy pledges since the start of his tenure that he wants to put a lot of investment into research and development, that he wants to create tech parks, that he wants to make Britain a hub of scientific innovation. Do you think that he's going to be able to deliver on this, or do you worry that this government is sort of all sound bites and actually a lack of showing the receipts?
I think there is concern around too many sound bites and lack of action and implementation. I think they need to be really, what we need is a government led by number 10 Cabinet Office to be really focused, not distracted with parties and all the other things that are going on, to stand a real chance of driving jobs, investment and growth right across the UK. That includes the levelling up agenda. I mean, any initiatives that are going to drive innovation science parks, playing to our strengths as the UK will only be a good thing. It'll be good for growth, good for jobs, and it'll be good for the UK. But you can't just say it and then expect it to happen. It needs real good leadership from government.
But whose responsibility is this? Is it necessary to create a position for someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg to actually consolidate and work cross-department to try and bring together all of these threads and actually create a sort of overarching policy for Brexit Britain? Or does this essentially just fall in the laps of departments that already exist and should be getting on with the job in hand?
Well, yeah, often, the big challenges are cross-cutting, and that's why we have a Cabinet Office in the first place. Their job is to coordinate government action so everybody is aligned and pulling in the same direction. So Cabinet Office, when it's working at its best, has a fantastic remit to bring departments together. If you look at trade, trade touches almost every single government department in some shape or form. So we need that cross-government working to make sure the oils are being wheeled, everyone is focused on what really makes a difference, and then importantly, implementing what makes a difference and delivering solutions. Cabinet Office can play a really powerful role there, as they have done historically.
Chris, thank you so much for joining me and giving me your contribution on this. That's Chris Southworth, who's the Secretary-General of the International Chamber of Commerce. That man knows a thing or two about trade, that's for sure. Benedict, what do you think on this? We've been discussing during the advert breaks about what sort of direction this is going to go in. It sounds like an exciting appointment. It's definitely red meat for the red wall.
Yeah.
But is it going to actually deliver?
Well, we wait and see. You certainly hope so. I think Boris Johnson's reputation will live or die by whether or not he is able to, as it were, get that Brexit dividend and sort of see an extra jump start to the British economy as a result of that. But it's not just about, trade and things like that. It's also, I think what we've seen throughout the pandemic is the dangers of globalization, actually. I know that some people think that's quite a regressive thing to say, but, the over-reliance on international partners when it comes to things like trade. We saw that with shortages of PPE and other goods when China essentially shut down, when the Yangtze Delta essentially shut down as a result of the pandemic. What we're seeing right now in terms of the energy crisis is over-reliance on importing energy from elsewhere. So as much as we can sort of take the Brexit opportunity to trade with the rest of the world, actually, I think is what is as fundamental is you look to sort of shore up your resilience at home. You look to make yourself almost as self-sufficient. Because I don't necessarily believe, just at the moment that we took a wonderful opportunity in terms of free trade and sort of being at part with the rest of the world, the rest of the world has decided in many ways, actually, we're not so sure about this. We're a lot keener on actually being a lot more nationalist, a lot more sort of interested, self-involved. And I think the UK is going to have to be aware of that. As we've seen, Russia is prepared to risk its gas, its energy relationship with the rest of the world over issues like Ukraine. China is prepared to risk its relationship with the West over things like Taiwan. We don't want to leave ourselves at the mercy of countries like that, having left the European Union, which constrained us so much, to then throw ourselves at the mercy of other powers that are perhaps even less friendly towards us. This is something that needs to be borne in mind, and it's just something that has stuck in my mind ever since we heard about the Prime Minister's new Director of Communications, Guto Harry, who used to lobby on behalf of the Chinese company Huawei, going into a meeting with Sir Eddie Lister saying, don't sanction Huawei, and Eddie Lister saying, well, we're not anti-China. And it's that sort of feeling that, what is it that we're going to be getting in return for all these opportunities? Is it going to come back to bite us down the line, all in the name of a fast economic recovery?
But surely there are some sort of green shoots of promise here in terms of things like the building of gigafactories, especially in the northeast, which should help shore up a huge amount of manufacturing and heavy industry in the UK. We've got the creation of free ports. Are these not arguably strong government policies that show we're massively already beginning to deviate away from the strictures of Brussels and really try and do our own thing?
Provided we do follow through with these things, yes. Actually, the economic diversification of the UK is long overdue, and it's what sets sort of economically powerful countries aside from those that are sort of more hampered. If you take a look at Germany and you look at sort of its industrial base compared to its economic centre, compared to its political centre, it's spread out. It's the same with the US. Whereas places like Italy or the UK, it's very much focused in one place. And, you begin to see the economic issues that arise from that. You get a lot of social issues that come from that, places being left behind with lots of people sort of not left aimlessly, but with far fewer opportunities. You get brain drains as a result of that. So yes, it is vitally important that we do these. These are all good ideas, but it's not just about seeing those things through. Global Britain mustn't become the victim to the winds of other global players as a result of it. I do think looking domestically at things like that, first and foremost, is very important. It is certainly one way that Boris Johnson could win back a lot of support that he has frittered away up to now. I wait to see whether or not it is implemented, because so often what we hear with successive British governments is we're going to do this, that and the other fantastic thing, and it never quite happens because of bureaucracy or spiralling costs, hello HS2. That just seems to be the trend. And it's why I do think, as I said earlier, the issue of Jacob Rees-Mogg's in his new portfolio, government efficiency, not so much Brexit opportunities, is perhaps the key part there.
Benedict, thank you. There you go, Moggy. If you're listening, a lot for you to be getting on with. There's your remit straight from GB News. You are with GB News on TV and DAB radio. After the break, some energy companies are hitting billions of pounds in profits. So should they pay a windfall tax to help reduce our bills? But first, it's time for a check on the news headlines.
Good afternoon, it is 2:32. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The legal requirement to self-isolate after testing positive with coronavirus could be scrapped by the end of this month. The Prime Minister says he plans to end all of the last domestic coronavirus restrictions a month earlier than previously announced, March the 24th. Boris Johnson told MPs he'll present the government's Living with COVID plan after the half-term recess. A picture of the Prime Minister's just been published by the Daily Mirror that they say shows Boris Johnson at a virtual Christmas quiz on the 15th of December in 2020. Now, at the time, coronavirus restrictions banned indoor social mixing between households. The Metropolitan Police are currently not investigating that gathering on the 15th of December, having reviewed evidence from the Sue Gray inquiry. Health Secretary Sajid Javid has accepted the apology of Junior Health Minister Gillian Keegan after she admitted continuing an in-person meeting despite finding out that she'd tested positive for coronavirus in a lateral flow test. While posting on Twitter, Ms Keegan said she was listening to three fathers who'd lost their daughters to suicide when she found out her positive results. Well, she says that with their consent, she stayed for a short period to hear their stories, but realises that was an error of judgment. Sajid Javid says he continues to support her in her role. Virginia Giuffre is going to be interviewed under oath by the Duke of York's lawyers in April as part of her civil claim against him. Ms Giuffre is suing Prince Andrew for damages in the US, claiming she was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein to have sex with the royal when she was 17. Prince Andrew has strenuously denied all allegations. He's also going to give evidence under oath in a deposition on the 10th of March in London in what's been described as a neutral location. Now, the cats belonging to West Ham footballer Kurt Zouma are now in the care of the RSPCA. Zouma apologised yesterday after a video surfaced online of him kicking and slapping a cat. The RSPCA are investigating the video, and an online petition calling for the defendant to be prosecuted over alleged animal cruelty has now received nearly 160,000 signatures. And some breaking news. The UK national terrorism threat level has been reduced from severe to substantial. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, says that means an attack is likely rather than highly likely. Of course, we'll keep you up to date here on GB News. Don't forget, we're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. Don't go anywhere. We need to talk about. We'll be back in a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. The optics are terrible as energy prices soar, plunging millions into fuel poverty alongside a cost of living crisis. Big oil and gas giants, rarely perceived as the good guys, are reporting record-breaking profits. First Shell, now BP. So as an open goal for Sir Keir Starmer to crow about big energy paying up, a populist Robin Hood strategy, if ever there was one, designed to make the government squirm. But how simple is such a policy? Like most back-of-a-fag packet sound bites, it's as crude as the oil the left wants to ban. Because as we transition to a carbon-free future, huge investment is going to be needed to fund net zero pledges. And that money has to come from somewhere, as do pension payouts depended on by millions of private sector workers. So before we all get carried away on a tide of left-wing fantasy, let's frack for some truth. Well, the row over whether energy companies should pay a windfall tax on their profits saw an angry exchange between Sir Keir Starmer and the Prime Minister in the Commons earlier today.
Shell's profits up £14 billion this year. BP's profits up £9.5 billion this year. Mr. Speaker, every second of the day, they've made £750 extra profit from rising prices. At the same time, households are facing an extra £700 a year on their bills. Why on earth is this government forcing loans on British families when they should be asking those with an unexpected windfall to pay a little more to keep household bills down?
Mr. Speaker, the Labour plan would clobber supply. It's an improvement on what I thought he stood for, which was nationalising the energy companies. Maybe he's dropped that one now. I can't tell whether he's dropped that one or not. But, Mr. Speaker, what he would be doing, maybe he has, what he would be doing, Mr. Speaker, is hitting the energy companies at precisely the moment when we need to encourage them to go for more gas, Mr. Speaker, because we need to transition now to cleaner fuels. And what this government is providing is £9.1 billion worth of support. It's more generous than anything Labour is offering. And I just repeat my point. The only reason we can do it is because we kept our economy moving in those hard times when they took the wrong decisions. And we came out of lockdown in July, Mr. Speaker, when he opposed it last year. And we kept going over Christmas and New Year when they opposed it, Mr. Speaker. And that's why we have the fastest growing economy in the G7, not just last year, but this year as well, as I never tire of saying.
Well, let's talk to the founder of Fuel Poverty Action Group, Ruth London. Ruth, do you think that companies like BP and Shell should be paying some of their profits to help UK homeowners and bills payers?
They absolutely should. First of all, we desperately need it because people are dying because they can't heat their homes, and they have it. They have plenty of money. Secondly, we've been subsidizing them for years. The taxes have worked in the negative for these big North Sea oil giants. We've been subsidizing their decommissioning. That's part of their job. They've had tax breaks on top of tax breaks, so that instead of actually paying into the coffers of the government to make possible the help that people need and make possible the transition to renewable energy that we so desperately need, instead of that, the British public has been paying them, and they've been paying out to their shareholders and paying to further invest in fossil fuels that are actually destroying the climate. And I think you just have to look at what Norway's done, because, in Norway, the state has been getting $21 a barrel for the oil that they get out of the North Sea. In the UK, they've been getting $1.72. 72 cents. And, that shows how little the UK has actually been benefiting from an industry that we've been subsidizing at our own cost.
I mean, but that sounds like a very obvious and simple solution, and one that I think most people sitting at home would happily be applauding. But it's a bit more complex than that, isn't it? Because when we look at the people who are in fuel poverty, it's usually pensioners who are having to choose between heating and eating. And you rightfully say that there are people out there actually losing their lives and falling into ill health as a result of this. But also, is it not pensions that are being gold-plated and shored up by the profits of these big energy companies, and actually throwing on a windfall tax, especially when we're going through this transition period into a carbon neutral future, could actually be far more injurious, and it's not that simple.
You know, they always trot out the pension funds and they always trot out jobs. But in fact, a huge proportion of the money that these companies make is actually going overseas. It's not even going to anybody here, even the shareholders here. And as far as the jobs are concerned, there's no reason why jobs couldn't be built up. They were being built up in renewable energy and in insulating homes. You know, what could be more obvious than the need to make sure that we're not heating the streets with this really expensive fuel that we have? What could be more obvious than to be sure that people can get their homes fixed, can get repairs done, can get the insulation put in so that we can actually stay warm, save money, save lives, and yet the jobs for that are not being created. And instead, we have jobs doing something which, frankly, you know, everybody knows that climate change is really serious now. You know, the floods, the extreme weather, you know, droughts, the food prices, you know, all the effects that we're suffering now. We cannot go down the road of continuing to subsidize these giants.
You say that, but I mean, we're also facing a crisis potentially unfolding when it comes to Ukraine, Russia, the way that Putin controls a huge amount of the gas supply to the continent of Europe. And as such, he's able to run riot when it comes to geopolitics. Is it not the case that when it comes to North Sea oil and gas, that we really should geopolitically and strategically at least not be punishing those industries and scaring them out of our economy when we could well rely on them when it comes to self-sufficiency and security, if it is only in the short term or medium term?
The best thing we could do for energy security is to switch as fast as we can to renewable fuels. The fossil fuels, we're at the mercy of a geopolitical situation, but this island is very well equipped with wind and tides and waves, and a huge amount could be done that would make the UK very well off in terms of energy supply, able to export it. And yet, instead, we're finding ourselves held to ransom by people who have been getting our support for years, and when it comes down to it, are actually shipping overseas the gas that we need. You know, the gas exports have actually increased, even while people here are going short. You know, that is a kind of vulnerability that we really don't need.
Ruth, it's been wonderful having you on the show. Ruth London, who is the founder of Fuel Poverty Action Group. Well, Benedict, it is so complicated.
Can I just add something? That we have a petition now. We've launched a petition on this. It's called Energy for All, that every home should have a right to what we need for the basics, heating, lighting, and cooking, and that the money should be found from windfall taxes and stopping these fossil fuel subsidies. Well, please see it on our Fuel Poverty Action website, and please do sign and encourage others to. We have to win this one.
Ruth, thank you so much. And viewers, if you're listening out there and fancy signing up, let's just finish the discussion first, shall we, and see what's really going on when it comes to the energy in this country. Benedict, it's hugely complex, isn't it? And it almost requires unpicking the structures of global capitalism in order to deliver this.
Yes, it's very complex. It's important, actually, that you pointed out the relationship that Russia plays with this and other countries as well. You know, the big natural fuel suppliers. Realistically, this massive price hike is not just the result of what's been going on in the last couple of months. It is the result of decades of a failure to plan. I agree, actually, with what Ruth just said there. Actually, this island could be self-sufficient in terms of its energy, but it's not just wind and tidal and geothermal. It's nuclear power is actually what we could do really easily, really quickly. We could transfer to nuclear power. We haven't done so, and we have left ourselves at the mercy again of the winds of change and the whims of other nations. The issues about a windfall tax, I don't see the benefits. As you've already pointed out, you'd be robbing pensioners. You'd be robbing a lot of people who actually do rely on the dividends and whose wealth is tied up in, their futures are tied up actually in the futures of fossil fuel companies. It's also the precedent, though, that it sets. If you are a major energy company and you're thinking about maybe taking money and investing it in things like nuclear or like renewable energy, and then a British government comes along and says, oh, fuel prices have gone up this year, and now we're going to take all of that money. You're kind of sat there going, well, where actually is the incentive for us as a company to invest in the UK's energy sector if what actually the government is showing is that it's a robber baron? It's not a Robin Hood tax. It's the Sheriff of Nottingham coming along and saying, I'll take that, yoink, thanks very much.
But Ruth does make a point here, doesn't she? When it comes to when we think of another European energy exporter, when I say another, we're not one, we look at Norway, who does take into their exchequer 21p, they put to 21p on a barrel into what imagines goes into a sovereign wealth fund or whatever. We're charging just 2p on a barrel. I mean, that's 10 times more that Norway is getting from its big energy giants. I mean, there's got to be some leeway here to say, and we've actually given them tax breaks over the years when times are difficult.
We could have gone down a different route in the past, but we are where we are now, and it's a bit late, I think, to row back, unless, as has been discussed, you want to go down the Norway route, you want to get the state more involved, which is, as so often we say, it's not necessarily the British government's strong point. We don't actually think of the British government and think, yes, business savvy, efficiency, these are all the hallmarks of Whitehall. It's not really like that. We're not, a Gulf state that can pump out the same sort of oil, or, as you say, Norway or Russia that has sort of, these unbelievable resources of natural wealth, and we don't necessarily have the will to sort of manage it ourselves. Actually, we've done quite well out of North Sea oil. We could do very well out of fracking. We've decided we're not actually going to go down that line, but the US has done very well, and to the point that it's now exporting gas to Europe to sort of deal with this crisis. There are options for us in the medium to short term to make up the shortfall. But as I say, this is decades in the making. We've known for a very long time that net zero has been the plan, and you can have all renewables or you can have nuclear if you want to get rid of fossil fuels. And we've decided we'll go for the really, really slow long-term one, and we're not really going to go for nuclear. So we'll have a few of them, but that's not the big thing. Actually, that was the thing that we should have done maybe 10 years ago, because now we hear about Whitehall saying, oh, maybe Sizewell C, maybe others, but this will take 10 years. And you're kind of sat there going, well, we need this now, actually. So what is available to us now? It's oil, it's gas. And the state doesn't control that thing. That's private companies, and that is the state that we get ourselves into. And you can't then say to those companies that are getting those fuels out of the ground, and now we're going to take all of your profits because we didn't plan well enough. That's not how it works.
No, it's confusing, isn't it? Well, do let me know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Now, finally, it's a brand new partnership, almost guaranteed success through notoriety alone. The strangest news of a collaboration since it transpired that Elton is Bezzers with Eminem. Of course, I'm talking about the announcement that Greggs and Primark are coming together to bring out a range of, well, Lord knows what. Are pasties replacing pastels? Are sausage roll necks going to be dominating winter catwalks? Will the bikini be the beachwear attire of 2022? With poverty chic, the de rigueur fashion statement for class-conscious, wokist charity shop raiders and boho hipsters, is sardonic style about to replace sartorial elegance? Well, will this fashion bake-off simply fail to take off? Well, joining us now is PR and branding expert Paula London. Paula, what's your reaction to this? I thought it was April the 1st.
I don't know. First of all, I thought it was a PR stunt. Then I thought it could be quite clever because I think there is a correlation between fast fashion and fast food. I think a lot of Primark's customers will probably buy Greggs food. So, and I think if a brand's been spoken about, as long as it isn't negative, it could only be a good thing. Some people might just pop in out of curiosity and then purchase something else as an impulse buy. So we'll have to see how it pans out.
I mean, the British do have this thing that they like being the butt of a joke. They like being quite self-deprecating, and they see the wit and humour in things. And people joke about Primani, don't they?
Yes,
and then, Greggs has almost got a cultish following for being a staple on the high street for the great and the good.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that it's going to be young people snapping these up because they're going to be the must-have items, or is this just a sort of harebrained concept doomed to fail?
I'm looking forward to seeing what happens, but I think it's important to remember as well, like Lidl and Aldi, when they had the trainers, they're now available for £1,200 on a resale site.
Woo!
So I'm sure some millennials, I think mainly, will be looking to buy these and then resell them. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
What sort of thing would you hope that they release? I mean, are we thinking it's likely to be some sort of strange branded clothing with hoodies with pictures of, like, chicken slices on? Or do you think they're actually going to bring out, I don't know, a range of beige pastry-coloured clothing?
Well, Mr. Reynolds, the spokesperson for Greggs, has said that he's continuously asked for a clothing range. I think this is incorrect. But I think that's quite ridiculous. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see. But, you know, there will be big brands in, you know, like Lidl and Aldi did, obviously. But I think it'll be interesting. And it's only going to be available in some stores. But, you know, most of the customers for Greggs are up north. So they will have a Greggs cafe in the Birmingham flagship store. So some customers will go there for Greggs and then maybe have an impulse buy in Primark. So I'm interested to see what happens.
Yeah, Benedict, would you wear something? If they brought out some sort of Warhol pop art-esque, like the baked bean cans, and it was sort of Greggs sausage rolls instead on a beautifully designed tailored shirt, would you be
I was going to say,
first in line?
do I strike you as the sort of person I don't know, maybe I'll ask my tailor if he wants to do a collaboration with the Wolsey. You know, I hear they're short of money at the moment. You know, maybe there's something in that. I can speak to you about many things, but it must be said the fashion industry is something that does slightly go over my head. I don't quite understand. Yeah, I obviously understand, you know, the scarcity and the slightly sort of the niche, novel concept of it. But what actually passes for fashion, what passes for fashion, well, I don't understand. That's why I try to wear really quite boring things that I can't possibly get wrong.
And do you think that this could well be a busted flush, that it will sort of die out as fast as it's popular, a bit like other things we've seen in the past when Burberry became like the print to have until everyone decided it was chav fashion and you know, those sort of velour tracksuits that were popular
and then chav, yeah, because I think a lot of people do think that chavs do like Greggs. So I mean, I guess, you know, and I guess
we all like Greggs, can I just say?
Well, I don't know that.
And I consider myself a chav, so there you are.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, don't quote me on that. I mean, I have read online a lot of people think chavs shop in Greggs, and you know, so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I'm going to...
Greggs? Does that make me a chav? I mean, is there something a bit chavvy about
Someone
me?
once told me that chav came from as a word for Cheltenham average, and it separated, you know, sort of people who went to public school in Gloucestershire and people who didn't. And as someone who went to state school in Gloucestershire, I think that makes me a chav. So I'm going to be getting my Greggs uniform.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Reclaim that word.
Thank you both. Lovely to speak to you on this more bizarre topic today. You've been sending me your emails throughout the show about whether you think the COVID restrictions should end. And Gillian says, I certainly do not want to continue restrictions. All of the testing and the isolations are putting me out of work as I am self-employed. A lot of people will be sympathetic to that. Sasha says, what about doctors, nurses and care home staff? Can they go to work with COVID? I'd imagine there are going to be a few caveats with the dropping of all these regulations. It does smell a bit like a bit of a PR game, doesn't it? Arthur says, Boris needs to end the Emergency COVID Act, not just isolation rules, where they're all up for grabs, it seems, in March. You've also been emailing in about Partygate and the latest drop of a photograph straight after PMQs. It's as if someone out there is timing it. David says, I've just seen the recent Boris Johnson party picture on your show. I believe it was work and it was not households mixing. I don't have a bottle of Prosecco right now, can I just say, and I'm at work. Jackie says, just like a relationship, trust doesn't come back. The PM can sugarcoat things, but the public are not stupid and see through him. If Tories don't do something quick to replace him, that was Benedict's view, the party won't recover for decades. There you go, Benedict. People have been listening. Julie says he was surrounded by one bottle, surrounded, she puts in inverted commas, one bottle and half a packet of crisps. Plus, we don't know if he had any of either. So this is the Zoom Christmas party quiz. I don't think it's very serious. We're all done with it now, aren't we? Let's be fair. That's about it for now. Join me again for We Need to Talk About tomorrow on GB News at the same time, same place, 2 o'clock. Coming up next, it's Darren McCaffrey with the briefing. First, it's the weather.
Hello. Most of us will have a dry day today, but increasingly across Scotland, we're seeing showers turning more and more wintry, and we have a Met Office warning for snow in place across parts of Scotland for later today. One more mild day across the south, but here it will turn colder as this cold front moves through. It is providing quite a bit of cloud, and in places a little bit of patchy rain. But it's further north where the winds are strengthening. We've got the wintry showers coming in, snow over hills, but even down to low levels, some snow flurries possible, moving in on that fairly brisk wind. Patchy rain from that weather front across parts of southern England, South Wales, tending to ease off and push further south. The far southeast, dry and bright, but clouding over here. That's where we could see the top temperatures, 13, maybe 14 degrees. Further north, though, we've already got the colder air. So single figures, feeling colder with the wind, and increasingly we'll see those snow showers coming in across western Scotland, likely to pep up overnight. Several centimetres of snow on some of the higher routes here. Snow down to low levels for a time before low levels turning more back to rain during Thursday. But ice is an extra hazard also. Patchy rain clearing the south, still pretty mild in the south, but not as mild as recent nights. Frost likely across the north where we have clear skies. And if you get some shelter from the wind. But a blustery, showery day across Scotland to come tomorrow. Those showers still of snow over hills. And again, the likelihood for some disruption. Ice is a potential risk as well, where we've got the showers during Thursday. Mostly dry and bright further south, but not as mild. Temperatures back closer to average single figures. Certainly feeling colder with the strong winds, which will be blowing for most of the day across Scotland before easing through the evening. Then, generally, as the winds continue to ease and we have clearer skies, it's going to turn cold on Thursday night with a fairly widespread frost. But that should lead into a sparkling day of sunshine for many on Friday before we see spells of wet and increasingly windy weather sweep across the country this weekend.